of the arguments that atheists give about God's existence is that...
Oh, it's this guy again. Wait. I know, but let's hear him out, shall we? Because it's not like the last 2 times he's made an absolute fool of himself whilst talking about things that their atheists believe, has he? No, didn't happen. Would never happen, and even if it did, it was probably the atheist's fault. Because he am the big smart.
God's invisible. That's what you Christians say, so how are we supposed to believe in an invisible God?
Oh, there it is. Good old silly. You know, I complain about it a lot because, too much of a good thing is a bad thing, but honestly, what would I do if I didn't get my regular dose of incredibly ignorant arguments, eh? No, dude, it's not because he's invisible. There's plenty of things that we can't see that are invisible that no one would ever say is an argument for their non-existence. Like wind. Can't see that shit, but you know it's there because it has tangible effects that cannot be attributed to anything else. And we even sussed where it comes from. Then there's gravity. I mean, don't tell the flat earthers, but that shit is real too and has some very far-reaching consequences for how it works and umpteen ways of detecting it. But God, none of that shit, mate. And no, your confirmation bias doesn't count.
So they treat the fact that God is invisible as though it's like the tooth fairy. He's invisible.
Ha, yes, exactly. And, intangible and has no measurable effect and all that jazz. Well, I say no measurable effect, but that's not fair. Sometimes, when a kid puts a tooth that has fallen out of their face for whatever reason under their pillow, when they awaken in the morning, they will find some amount of money that weirdly is affected by their socio-economic status. Okay, but yeah, there. Proof positive of the tooth fairy. Except, as we all know, that's not what actually happens. It's not really the tooth fairy, it's Toothzilla, the giant tooth monster that adds those it acquires to its mass until one day it has enough requisite size in order to destroy mankind. Any day now.
You know what I mean? Santa Claus coming to the chimney. How did he get through? He's invisible. So...
What? Santa's not invisible. The f*** are you talking about? You're not even getting your myths right. Santa just doesn't show up if you're awake, or at the very least, aren't pretending to be asleep. And then he drunkenly breaks into your house, steals your milk, cookies and bourbon, before eventually passing out in the bathtub, covered in said milk, cookies and bourbon, and a not insignificant amount of vomit. Ah, memories.
What people do often is they try to put God in the category of all these fantasies of the invisible friend that I have. We know that invisible friend you have doesn't really exist.
Is it just me, or is he talking himself out of his godism? No, mate, you go right ahead and tell us how your invisible friend is any different from the countless other invisible friends in the world, whether they be religy boys or the stories we tell kids to give them that sense of wonder or whatever. I am looking forward to just what makes yours so very special.
And so that's one of the arguments that atheists have against God's existence. Well, the New Testament actually deals with the invisibility of God.
Oh, well, the New Testament, eh? Wow, using the Bible as your one and only point of reference to argue for your God boy. That's a new and interesting take that I certainly have never heard before. Please do go on about how a book written by a bunch of ignorant yahoos from a time when they barely understood how anything worked, and so made up a bunch of shit that seemed pretty cool to them, and went with that, aka the height of science to this very day.
The Apostle Paul writes in 1 Timothy chapter 1, verse 17, "Now to the King, eternal, immortal, invisible God."
Oh, but I hate to tell you this, the Apostle Paul, assuming that he actually existed and wrote/said that and everything else, well, he was just a dude. You know the thing about dudes? Yeah, they can say literally anything that they feel like. Doesn't make that in any way, shape or form true, especially as nothing said within the Bible has any of that proof and evidence stuff. Because it's literally all people just talking shit. Not exactly compelling stuff.
Not only is God invisible, he's eternal.
Well, that just makes it worse. I mean, talk about characteristics that scream me am the fake. What's next? That he somehow is all-knowing, all-powerful and all-loving and yet is completely incapable of stopping or perhaps even allows bad things to happen all the time and claims that who man's doing things is free will. even though if he knows what you're gonna do without fault, then everything is predetermined. But no one would invent a character with that many blatant contradictions to them. That would be stupid.
In fact, everything that you can see has temporal existence. But God is eternal. All right? So
everything that you can see has a finite existence. So that means anything we can't doesn't. Okay then. Something like, say, emotions. Can't technically see them, but they're eternal. You know, that makes sense actually, because my pure, unbridled hatred and rage towards the humans is eternal. So it stands to reason.
He's also immortal. Everything we see dies. Everything eventually dies and decays. But God's immortal.
Dude, you realize what you're doing here isn't going to convince any atheist of anything, right? Because what you are doing is regurgitating a bunch of shit said by other people that in no way proves God exists. Whether or not something is said to have whatever qualities, the saying of those out loud does nothing in terms of proving the thing. That's not how it works.
So not only is God invisible, he's also eternal and he's immortal. But why is he invisible?
Cause right, and don't tell anyone I let you in on this little secret, he doesn't doing the realsies. That's why they made him invisible. So when someone goes, hey, I cannot see this gird of which you speak, you'll be all like, no worries dog, he's just got his opacity set to 0. And they fall for it every time. And then you can get them to give you money, and then you can build a mega church and not do anything to help the poor because you're a piece of shit and too stupid to see the inherent hypocrisy of that. But it's okay, because apparently your congregation are even dumber than you.
It's real simply, it's not very difficult to understand. God's invisible because he belongs to a higher dimension.
Okay, just put simply, it's not hard to understand. It's only multiverse theory. Absolutely fantastic. Way to completely undermine yourself, dude. Like, that's a thing that we cannot prove exists yet. But what if we did? And we could go there and find out. But wait a minute, there's no God here. Where does he go next? I mean, I know he goes up another level, because, oh, I said higher, that realm was parallel. Yeah, well, when you have to repeatedly justify that something exists by saying, it's actually just harder to find, I'm going to start thinking that maybe you are making that shit up.
Then we can understand. He is on the zenith of all dimensions.
Okay, got to admit, I spent far too long looking up Zenith before I realised, and this could be wrong, maybe he knows something I don't, but who are we kidding? It occurred to me that he means Zenith, like the Zenith, not Zenith, whatever the hell that's supposed to be. But what I assume is he means God is the top of all dimensions. And what did I tell you? No matter how far we get and find nothing, that's never not going to be a sign that maybe God doesn't real. It's like this. If you're walking down an infinite road and you're promised that just over the horizon there was that thing you always wanted, well, you could walk forever. But don't be surprised when you never find your 10-foot-tall, topless Henry Cavill statue made of chocolate. I know it's just over the horizon, man. It has to be.
See, we creatures that's part of this universe are part of the third dimension.
Well, you might be, but I am part of the 69th dimension, aka the nice dimension. And I mean nice, not nice. It's a sex thing. I doubt you would understand. And I mean any of you. We all know that I am the only one who does all the good sexing. And that's a fact backed up by science.
There's only 3 dimensions that we understand. Height, depth, and breadth. That's it.
Oh, come on. Even a dumbass like me knows that the 4th dimension is time. There's a reason it's called time and space. Because if you want to pinpoint someone's exact location, you need to know not only where, but when. Otherwise, they could be literally f***ing anywhere. Even right behind you now. Oh, my God. Nah, only joking. No one wants to be near you. Gross. You
know the cube that you see? You remember this in physics? There's the cube, and that's what we live in. We live in that 3 dimension.
I f***ing knew it. Of course we live in cubes. It all makes so much sense now. That's why all the people around me keep getting sliced into little chunks. No, wait, that's just the movie The Cube. I'm the reason for the chunky ones. You know, because it's funny.
Well, if any beings should happen to be in the 2nd dimension, they would not be able to see us. We would be invisible because we would be of a higher dimension.
Don't pretend you are of a higher anything than any other being. You're a humans, and everyone knows that second, first, or even minus 26th dimensional creatures are all far and above the filthy degenerates that you lot are. And it's not that they can't see you either. They just don't want to look at you, because, I mean, look at you. That weird shape, all those appendages and shit. It's disgusting. Stop it.
And someone in the first dimension would definitely not be able to see anyone in the second or third. Because the only thing we can see is what's in the third dimension.
Right, okay, and bear with me on this. Does that make us the gods of the second or first dimension or whatever? Or does that make it something that we cannot interact with or influence at all? And if that's the case, then what does that mean for any and every creature living in the 5th or 500th or whatever dimensions? It says that we cannot interact with them, nor they us, ergo, your God concept, under the shit you just explained, doesn't work. Boom! You am being the big debunked. Frickin' pounds, sunshine! What do you think to that?
They tell us that there is the black holes.
Oh yeah, just look at that. Ignore me, why don't you? He knows he got totally ruined by my big smart boy Brian. Well, it's a big smart boy brain compared to his, but that's really not saying much. Anyway, what's that? Something about black holes?
And they call that the fourth dimension because it's beyond the understanding of time.
Who calls black holes the fourth dimension? What are you talking about? Do you just hear words and rearrange them and that's now your understanding of how the universe works? Because that might explain a lot. But no, black holes are hyperdense clumps of matter with gravitational fields so powerful that they with not just space but also time. Because when you do physics at a big number, it starts to get really weird.
And yet we can't see it. And we'll never be able to see it because if it does exist and it's on the fourth dimension, we by nature in the third dimension cannot see anything beyond our third dimension.
You have two options there. Either we cannot ever do that, and thus God cannot ever do that, or God can do that, and then there is a possibility that we can. See, I know you don't actually know what you're talking about, but you could have at least thought about it before you barfed it onto the internet. We've got enough barf here. It's starting to smell.
But we believe it exists because we see some effects on it. But we'll never see it. Does that mean you deny that it exists?
Right, it's not about what I do or don't think about the effects of whatever unexplained thing. What happens in science is they try to find a hypothesis that explains as many of the effects of a thing as possible, and then go out of their way to prove it wrong. Whilst, and this is the important part, making sure that none of that explanation makes it so that it can't be proven wrong. Such as saying, you will never be able to know this thing is real or not. That makes that thing unfalsifiable, therefore unscientific. Therefore an explanation that isn't worth pursuing. Guess which category God falls under?
No, what I'm trying to tell you is God is beyond time, space, and matter.
Well, I guess that answers that question then. And if that's the case, how do you even know he exists at all? And no, you already said that we can't communicate outside of our little cube. So we have no evidence of something being able to do that. So you even hinting at the idea that God can is pure supposition with nothing backing it up.
And because he's beyond time, he is from eternity past. He has always existed and will always exist.
Yeah, sure, why not? You gotta love that smug look on his face like he's actually made anything resembling a substantive argument and not just a philosophical equivalent of saying, you know my magic beans work, because they're also psychic.
He is beyond matter, which means he's beyond the physical solid, gas, water. He's beyond anything that we can touch.
You know what else has those properties? Literally every single thing that doesn't exist, you colossal buffoon. Seriously, there are a lot of gods in human mythologies. But tell me, what is the substantive difference between a god that is real and a god that is not? What is a thing that you can do that proves yours is the real guy over anyone else who also believes wholeheartedly that theirs is the real guy? And if you say, 'cause you just know, I'm going to eat my own face.
And then he is beyond, and because he's beyond the physical matter, he's beyond our sight. And he's beyond time and space. That means as we creatures, we're limited in space. We're here and not there. But God's everywhere.
Wait. You said God was outside of our universe. Now he's inside it and everywhere? Would you make up your mind, you slippery little gonad? Seriously, I cannot keep up with this shit if you literally change the rules at the drop of a hat for no reason.
So when we talk about God being invisible, it's his nature. Because if he was visible, then guess what? He would only be part of the mortal, temporal universe.
Also known as a thing that actually exists and not a thing that doesn't exist. And we have no reason to think that they do because we have literally zero way to know. So why even act like we do when we don't, so won't, because that's not how knowing things works.
And that would not make God God. So God is invisible by nature because that's who he is. Any other form of visibility would not make sense.
So, you're saying that if anyone can detect God in any way, then whoever they are detecting is in fact not God. Hey man, you said it, not me. Wait, before you go, I have something super important to tell you. It's life or death. It will change everything forever. Nope, wait, it's gone. Oh well, probably wasn't important. But while I have you, don't forget to comment, subscribe and notify. And if you want more of my smexy voice, check out Mrs. Six's channel, Spoonstar Stories, where I narrate and voice all the videos, and she does the work. And if you want to support the channel, check out the merch store for cool t-shirts, or check out Patreon, memberships and PayPal to support directly. Finally, follow me on the medias of social to get completely pointless guff and to keep up on the latest releases. Oh, I just remembered what I was going to tell you. Whatever you do, don't touch the